Welcome to our podcast, We're Not So Different.
I'm Samira.
And I'm Ali. We're two professionals having real conversations about our experiences at home, work, and out in the community.
We tell our stories through the lens of our different backgrounds to just find out that we're not so different.
In our podcast, we'll explore ways that we can improve engagement and bridge social gaps while trying to find the humor in it all.
Check us out on social media at wnsdifferent or email us at wnsdifferent@gmail.com.
Today's episode is all about civic engagement. What kind of civic engagement? I mean, I call it from the PTA to voting, right? Like the importance of being active in every facet of
your
everything.
life.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, if you have an opinion about something and want to make a difference, or even just don't like it, but you don't want to make a difference, if you want, because you know, there's a lot of people who complain about how things are and man, the government, or man, the school, or man, the store, you know, whatever it is. Or, you know, there's trash everywhere, whatever the complaint is. If you...
Potholes in Oakland.
Right.
Oh
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you want to make a difference, or if you want that to stop, you have to get involved. And I think people just need to understand that we can't expect others to take care of everything for us.
Fair.
Right? Yeah. We can't expect the teachers to raise our kids the way that we want them to raise our kids. You know, for example, even through elementary school, how many kids are in your son's class?
Right now, like, I'm trying to think like the COVID versus non, because I think the classes are smaller.
Well, that's good.
Unfortunately, but typically he's in one of the larger classrooms, so it's anywhere from 25 kids to 28 kids.
Usually
yeah.
That's normal. I mean, sometimes it can even go up to 32
schools,
kids, right? So one teacher with 32 kids, 5 years old to, we're talking elementary school, to 10, 11 years old.
Yeah, it's like corralling chickens.
That's 32 different perspectives, 32 different family backgrounds, 32 different points of view, both politically and religiously. We can't expect a teacher to teach our children to live according to our values. We just can't, because we all have different values. We all have different points of view.
Yeah.
We can ask them to be neutral and just inform of, hey, these are the different things that are out there. These are the different religions. These are different cultures. These are the different orientations. These are the different whatevers, diets, whatever we want them to, you know, just so that the kids know, because knowledge is important. But we can't expect them to teach them the values that we want. So, for example, when my kids went through sex education, I didn't expect their teachers to come and teach them about my points of view.
Okay.
Right? Like abstinence or whatever.
What was that first word again?
You wouldn't know.
Okay.
Abstinence.
All right, sorry. You have to take,
right. Do I want them to, you know, save themselves for marriage, or what are my views of sex, or what do I think? What do I wish my parents would have told me about it? Yeah. My parents were pretty liberal when it came to that, but they didn't necessarily educate me. Right? You know, like, I knew what the mechanics were. I knew that it was my choice. I knew that my mom basically said, only do it because you want to do it. Yeah. Which I think is really good. Yeah. But the problem is how do you know when you're just a horny teenager, or you're actually like ready? And what does that mean? And what are the impacts afterwards? Emotionally, spiritually, all of those things, not just you could get a disease or you could get pregnant part of it, right? Yeah. So it's important that parents have those conversations regularly with their kids. And that's just one example of it. Yeah. You know, when we talk about policies or, you know, other things, the more we get involved, the more of a difference we can make. Yeah, I agree. I want to take a step back and then take a step forward. We're going to do a little dance.
So part of it is like, when we think about, you know, what do we mean to our listeners? Like, what do we mean when we're talking about civic engagement, right? And we're saying that it means everything that you have any sort of an impact on, small or large, right? So the highest level of civic engagement probably would be oh, I'm voting in the 2020 election, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm voting for the president of the United States, right?
Right.
All the way down to like the PTA and everything in between, right? Is it city
Your
council?
HOA board.
Your HOA board, your HOA, your PTA. I was in a dance club for my kids' school. Your local officials, your city councils, your librarian. You know what I mean? Whatever it is, from the lowest levels to the highest. One of the things I want to touch on is people feel a sense of hopelessness sometimes when it comes to engaging civically, and civically also includes voting, obviously. People feel a sense of hopelessness because they feel like at the highest levels, what they do doesn't matter. Yeah. Right? And to some degree, that's true. Right?
Right.
Popular vote versus electoral college.
Right.
All of the redlining that
but
happens.
That will never change.
The gerrymandering that's done, all those sorts of things. They feel like, hey, I don't really have a dog in the fight, either because of hopelessness or because of the lack of impact, right? One could even say that, if I vote for president, one way or the other, for the most part in my day-to-day life, it doesn't really impact me as far as driving to work, my kids going to school, what have you. But that's where we say the importance of it is at every level. And you mentioned like with the kids thing, and that's important. So I'll give you a quick.
But I would disagree with you we see now with this current administration, right? People that he appointed did directly impact our kids.
I agree with that.
So, and I think to your point earlier, where you have the popular vote versus the electoral college, that's I think where most Americans feel like my vote doesn't really matter. But what they forget is that not all elections are based that way.
Correct.
Right? It's really just the presidency, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So it shouldn't deter you from voting, period. And it definitely shouldn't deter you from voting in your local elections or state level elections, because those are not counted the same ways. And if we don't have the data, then we can't change things. For example, when this last election, whoever you voted for, right? Hillary won by 3 million popular votes, right? Like it was about almost 3 million votes that she won. So that starts to bring the question, how did we decide electoral college? What were the driving factors? Is that still relevant now? Is that still a good example or way of functioning? So now that we have that data, because so many people did vote, we can we have been asking those questions about, is this really the best system? Can we change the system? And people are trying to drive change. So when you're involved, even if it doesn't work out now, it will come up later, and it'll give us at least information to go off of to say, hey, now we can make better decisions.
So maybe it depends on the type of voter, because I agree with you on the presidential thing. I think this was I hate to say an outlier, but this current president is an outlier though. Like typically it's business as usual, and there are overarching things, like there are bad laws, there's bad legislation, but there's rarely a case where you have someone and like everyone that they hire is bad and they're firing people that are doing like. So,
there's been so much churn inside the White House.
To your point, no, I mean to your point that's accurate. Like this one, like we have to include this in the record, right?
Yeah.
Because of
the other ones have been just more sly about it.
Yeah, exactly.
They're more diplomatic. Yeah. They're more, unfortunate. And we got to be realistic. The United States of America is a huge country. It's extremely diverse. It has tons of different points of view. So there will no president will ever make everyone happy.
No.
Right? Just like in a family, or a child, or a parent, or a spouse,
or a co-host.
Or a co-host, exactly. We'll never be fully happy with each other. We'll never be we will never fully agree. But you learn to deal with it, right? You take the good, and then you progress from there. I mean, not with your spouse, I hope. Like, hey, this one was good. Next.
I mean,
maybe co-host.
Sometimes. No, I agree with you, and I think that's where I think. Because there are different types of people. There are some people that are just like, hey, I'm going out to the polls and I'm voting at the federal level no matter what, right?
Yeah.
And there are some people that are just like, man, like what's the point, right? I even talked to
or like we live in California, it usually sways Democrats. So why even
like,
why?
Yeah,
what's
I'm
like,
going
what
out
am
to
I
the
voting
polls for
for?
what? But I agree with your point, and it's funny. While I'll touch on non-civic engagement in a second. So to your point, you can go a lower rung from there, right? You can say, okay, I'm not really sure about that one. Like I may feel a certain type of way at the federal level. To your point, I think it should, but it's your prerogative. If you pay tax, it's your business what you do, right? You can put in for like, hey, who's going to represent my state in Congress, right? Who's going to be my congressman or congresswoman, right? Or you can go down further and say, how do I affect change in my city? Right, who's on the city council? Who sits on these different boards? Who sits on?
Who authorized this shopping center like 2 blocks from my house, or this liquor store? Like, who do I talk to about this?
And here's the interesting thing: if you think about how politics work, and I'm just talking about the local level. I don't know about other. I can't speak to other states or other counties, but if you notice, it seems more broadly that the federal elections are pushed and get all the noise, but your local elections
are the
not
ones
so much, and those are the ones that make the most difference because it's who sits on my school board,
right? Who's the city planner?
Who's the city planner?
Right,
exactly.
Like even Walnut Creek, the last few years, they have been building skyrises, you know, just apartments, condos, things like that, and it's getting so crowded and congested, and the schools are getting impacted, and it's not as safe as it used to be. The local elected officials are the ones who are making those decisions. The ones approving. So if we didn't like that, we should have gotten involved.
Yeah.
And you know.
And those are the things you kind of have to. I mean, when we talk about civic engagement, those are the things you have to claw and scratch for, right? Because that's not where information is going to be readily available.
Because people aren't campaigning like that. They're not as involved.
Yeah, yeah.
They're more focused on the larger things.
And to your point, if you do get in one of those seats, and you're just a person that's reelected year after year, like there's no you're like, oh, I'm good.
Yeah.
You know, but
and that goes for like a town that makes no progress.
Right.
You keep picking the same people over and over. Yeah. It's really, really important. You know, even as something as simple as my HOA. So I had an issue with my HOA to the point where I took it to next door.
Yeah.
Where I was like, does anybody know who I can talk to about this issue? And I got so many responses from people that very frustrated. Yeah. They don't do anything, neither the management company or the board. It's all talk, blah, blah, blah. So eventually I had to schedule a meeting with the property manager company because I was just so frustrated over something so simple as a timing of a sprinkler that was right by my window that was impacting my sleep. And it was just months and months and months of back and forth over a sprinkler. Like, it's really not very difficult. Can you please just set the timer to not go off at 2 a.m? That's it. Like, not, you know, something simple. And it was taking months and months and months. I had to go to the board. I had to do this. Anyhow, I finally set an appointment with the lady. We had a great conversation. And she gave me the dynamics of the board. And it was basically what we said. There's, you know, one person who's progressive, and then there's 2 older folks who don't want to change anything. They like that the place is dated. They don't want to invest. They don't want to make any decisions, and that's why everything is taking so long. And she was like, there's 2 seats available.
There you go.
Right? So I was like, okay, if I am so annoyed, like, it really does impact me.
No, I'm surprised. Really I would have dug that thing up. Like
it really does.
I'd have killed the sprinkler.
Right. It really does impact me. Even something like tree trimming. I had asked them for tree trimming because of fire safety, and they finally came and trimmed the trees a year later. But I noticed that there are less leaves in my patio. So I was like, wow, I can actually go sit in my patio every day instead of having to clean it every morning.
Right.
So it's these little things that we don't realize impact us, but it's going to take time. It's going to take effort. It's going to take involvement. But we need to be involved. That way we don't become victims of the system.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. A similar situation to what you mentioned earlier is, you know, I've always taken an active role in my son's school. His mother has taken an active role. She was part of the PTA and an active member. I was one of the I guess founding members of the Dads Club, and me and a few other dads were like really, really active, just doing all sorts of stuff, just making life easier for teachers, like taking down old TVs and painting and fixing planter boxes. And we had fundraisers. We had like movie nights for the kids and showed movies. And we were able to raise funds and put shades up in the auditorium because there was always light coming in, so you couldn't really show anything on the projector. Things like that. And I think the ripple effect of that is something that can't be understated, because it's not just about making sure things are better for yourself and what you want. Like, I'm sitting on the HOA board because I want my sprinkler fixed, right? But it's also the people around you that say, I'm having the same issue as you are. I'm having a separate issue that's equally bothersome. I'm going through something that hasn't been fixed in 3 or 4 years. It's to hear it's really all about the voice of the people. At the end of the day, any board, any elected official, any government, any congressman or woman, any president, you are supposed to be the voice of the people. But when that stops, then the people have to demand that their voices be heard, right? And part of that, along with, what we're going through now, protesting and being in the street, is joining these boards, joining these city councils, making sure that they're diverse and saying, I want to do something that is for the benefit of all. And by us doing that, it makes the teachers' lives easier. The kids enjoy it more. Oh, the dad's club is super fun, and they do this thing and that thing and whatever.
It sets a good example for the kids. Like, when I grow up, that's the type of dad I want to be. I want to be the one who comes and helps and sees, gets to see my kid playing around or whatever while I'm helping build the school and doing something nice, because they appreciate that. Exactly.
And it's funny that you mentioned the cultural aspect of it too, because we're doing the virtual school and the teacher was on the call with the parents of the class. And it was funny because she was talking about the curriculum for the year. And so they're going through the curriculum, and part of their cultural learning was to learn about a Native American group. Now, his teacher's a white woman, and most of the kids in the class are kids of color. And she said in this little curriculum guide, it says we're going to learn about the Indian tribe, yada yada yada. And she it's funny because she caveated. She said the school system decided that they were just going to say Indian. And I'm like, well, which Indians are we talking about? Native Americans or Indian Indians? Indians from the other side of the globe, like where Columbus thought he was. Those. And she said, no, Native Americans, but the school decided to do this and the other, but I'm willing to take comments from parents. And I raised my hand and I said, okay, for me, speaking for myself, I know that it's your curriculum. I don't care what the school board said. You need to change that name. It's not Indian, it's Native American. You need to make the distinction, not only because it's right to do that, but also because of the fact that there are Indians that live here. Right? Change it to the name of the tribe or whatever, because they were going to study a specific tribe. We'll change it to that tribal name, and then another person, another one of the dads in there was saying, I'm willing to sign up and do like a cultural lesson sort of thing or what have you, and I'm going to sign up with him. So to your point about civic engagement, it's not just about voting. It's about voicing, right? It's the 2 V's, voting and voicing. Right? And in the position that you're in, you say, hey, here is something that I don't necessarily agree with. I know what the right thing is to do, and I'm gonna speak on that specific thing, right? And if it means I need to follow up and ask her and say, hey, teacher, how do I reach out to the school board and say, what are you guys doing? Why don't you put Native American? I'm confused as to why we're still saying Indian. Like, do you understand that the person that fumbled into this country, we're still using that? From Chris, we're still using that. The person that was lost. Think about that. The person that was lost in 1492, right? 600 years ago.
Still gets to dictate.
Still dictates the name of the land he thought he was in. That is amazing that we still use that. Like that is it's so disrespectful. Because the origin is someone who was confused. Right. So, but anyways, I digress on history as usual. But to your point about the civic piece of it, those things are important. Another quick example is in North Carolina, in Charlotte, one of the activists that was there, loud in the street and always protesting, he ran for the city council, was put on the city council, and part of why he was protesting was because a black man there was shot by police, and it was very sketchy, the circumstances. There was no de-escalation, so on and so forth. And by joining the city council, he was able to push for legislation that demanded that the body camera footage be submitted to the courts for the entire incident. What was happening is they were submitting body cam footage for 1 minute before the shooting, and I think like 1 minute after, or something like that, right?
Oh my
so
gosh.
this is where the importance of who's representing you in local small government, city, county, makes a difference, because they were able to push and say, okay, I know that this may not be the speedy change that everybody's looking for, and we've arrested this person, but what I can do is make change in the future, so that when these incidents come up and the court has to see it, and this is determining what happens to that specific police officer or the other officers involved, or who gets sued, or whether or not justice is actually served, I can get the full range of the video. Like with Brooks in Atlanta, he was asleep in the Wendy's parking lot, right? How does 46 minutes after you meet up with somebody end up in death?
Yeah.
Right? Like, what are all the things that transpired? Was there significant de-escalation done? Did, after they walked up casually, what happened to that point? Why didn't they just let them pull over to, like, you can ask all the questions of what was necessary and what wasn't, right? And then you start to look at, well, based on other information we have, you let all these other folks off when they get drunk and let them pull aside. Why did you need to arrest him specifically, right? So, but a court will never see that. So if I never see it, I can never opine about it or make a judgment. So, to your point about the civic piece of it, it's the voting and the voice, right? And you have to make sure that you're voting, voice, and getting involved, right? It's like I have to make sure I'm part of this process. Otherwise, what change is going to be affected? Or who's going to stand up, right? Even in the case of my kid's classroom, who's going to stand up and say, I don't agree with this, or this isn't right, or whatever. So,
do you think that people who don't get engaged or involved have a right to complain about what's going on? Because that's one thing that irks me to bits.
Really?
Is people who complain but aren't willing to do anything about it. It's like, it's fine if you don't want to do anything.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. Everyone has the right to choose. But stop complaining. Like, if you don't sit and be judgmental and self-righteous and say how horrible things are and how cruddy they are and post this and that opinion like you know everything when you aren't willing to do anything about it.
Let me ask, okay, I like that question. This goes into our like non-active voters or what have you. So I was posed this question, and I hate to answer a question with a question, but let's dive into it a bit. Someone said to me, if I'm so over the election and the process and the dog and pony show, and I'm watching the RNC and the DNC this year, and it is just... You
watched them?
Hell no.
Oh, I was going to say I couldn't.
No, I couldn't. It's ridiculous.
I couldn't. It was just...
Anytime you have people up there that are speaking because protesters are walking past and they're pointing their guns at them, and those are the representatives you have talking at a national convention at the federal level.
Like, I've heard different versions of that, and the problem with having so many different versions being so aggressively thrown at you is you no longer know what the truth is.
I agree with that 100%.
So it becomes difficult. Some say that they lived in a gated community and the protesters broke into the gated community and started protesting in a community. If that's true, well, why that community? Were they targeting specific officials? I don't know. And that's the problem, is that you get so much variation in evidence, and not to justify what they did, because the people were just walking by. Whether you liked it or not, they weren't damaging your property. They were just, from what I saw, they were just walking by being, in their opinion, obnoxious or whatever. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't give you the right to point your gun at them. right? Like it's just like if you feel like you're threatened, that's fine. Be out there, be prepared, but you don't have to actually point your gun at anybody.
So
right,
and so for me, that's the thing. Like to your point, I wasn't there, but when I'm from a larger viewpoint, because this is what the person and I were speaking to. Whenever you're having a national election, and you're saying I'm representing my party, and one of your spokespersons or people is a white couple that were I'm just saying the fact that
controversial
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I know.
The fact that you're even going there, right?
Yeah,
and that would be like the DNC doing the same thing. Oh, I'm going to get one of the protesters that was the loudest from one of the things to talk. Like this is a federal.
This is where we
election.
Are in this society.
This is where this is a federal election. These are laws,
it's
rules.
Reality
this
TV.
This is healthcare. This is infrastructure. This is military. This is these huge overarching things.
Yeah.
But you're bringing people from the grassroots to come speak about get off my lawn.
Not even positive movement grassroots. Like there are people from that side that are truly like trying to advocate. I don't know, and I haven't really been able to find the origin of this. So if you guys are listening and you have some history on it, please email us at wnsdifferent@gmail.com, because I really want to learn more about this, and I haven't been able to pinpoint the origin or anything. But there is this correlation being made between the Republican Party and Trump followers specifically and trying to prevent child sex trafficking.
Okay.
Right? And almost to a point where it's becoming politicized to say that the Democrats are all supporters of child sex trafficking because Clinton was on the plane. The Clintons were on the plane.
That stuff is ridiculous.
And, not that, we already know what Donald Trump said about them, but not, before we go on that rabbit hole, the point is they could have taken somebody who was actually trying to do good, and something I think majority of people can align on.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's bad. Like, let's stop that. I can hang out with someone whose political views I may not agree with.
Right.
And we can fight that issue together. I'm with you on that. Let's not talk about the other stuff. Yeah. But this, I'm with you on 100%. But they didn't, right? And it's just that it's the fact that they took something that was so full of hate, and so full of, just trying to promote fear into people so that people react, because it's a psychological and emotional response, right? People don't think logically anymore when they're afraid, right? Mm-hmm. When we have that, to your point, at the federal level,
why are you having these
the
people
most
there?
Powerful level in our
right.
in our country? And
why are they even there?
I would even argue at one point, I don't know about now anymore, but in the world, and you do that, it's embarrassing.
Yes.
It makes me feel like I used to always compare Iran and America together, because those are my two citizenships, right? Those are the two countries that I'm from, technically. And I've never, ever, ever, ever thought that I would say that there are so many similarities between these two governments. Really? Yeah, I never thought that I would say that. And I never thought that I would say in America that there's so many parallels, so many similarities.
Even if you take out the extremes, right? Just think about mindset, right? Like taking out, like you mentioned before, someone protesting in Iran, you can be executed. Take out the extreme of the action, but think about more the process. Absolute power and control. I think selfishness, stubbornness, to me, that's American government to me.
Right. And I think the distinction we have right now in the United States is that in the United States, the government that is more dominating or quote unquote corrupt or fascist minded is not in complete power yet. Got it. Okay. Right? Yeah. However, if we allow these things to continue, it can get there. Yeah. We're very lucky that the military does not back.
Oh, yeah, like a dictatorship sort of.
Because if it did, or if all cops aligned with that mentality.
Yeah.
Right? Because they don't. The reality is they don't.
Yeah.
However, the system is so corrupted.
But it's trying to push them to do it, right? We saw that with the federal police and all that. I mean, it's trying to push.
He tried.
He's trying to
but
do
it's
the
not
dictatorship,
succeeding.
so.
And that's why it's so critical for right now that we put our political differences aside and really just think about what is best for everyone.
Correct.
For equality.
Yeah, human alignment.
For human alignment.
Yeah.
And it really, I'm at a point where I don't even know what my political party is because I disagree so much with everyone.
Yeah, I just
I really don't have one.
It's a dog and pony show. I mean, they had that. You know, I'm not saying that the DNC hasn't done similar things. I mean, just the tactics are stupid. The one you're talking about, sex trafficking. How do you politicize that? Like, if I'm not mistaken, if I'm not mistaken, Epstein has pictures and names in his black book of everyone of every party.
Every party.
Like let's not go. If anything, it's more of a demographic than anything else, right? If you want to be real about it, it's a specific demographic. But I'm not going to go there on this episode. So trying to make that a political thing is nonsense.
Not a political
no
thing.
one believes
it's a
there's a small
thing.
fraction of people that are trying to sex traffic. There's a small percentage of people that agree with that. There's probably a larger percentage of people that are actual pedophiles and will prey on young people. Yeah. But to say that that's a political thing, no. Let's not get that confused.
That goes everywhere.
So to me, that sort of game playing. So the person I was talking to, going back to it, was like, this is such a joke. That these are the types of things that are being run at a federal level, and we have all this other stuff to worry about, including international threats on intellectual property, international threats on the voting process itself, which with Russia, for example, you know what I mean? Like interfering with but we're talking about who was standing on their lawn with a gun, and like that's the person we want to represent. This is a joke.
And I think that's why a lot of Republicans after that just were like, we can't align ourselves with this party anymore.
It's a joke.
And it's really just sad that everything is turning into, it's no longer about dignity, character, respect. And then I think people are trying to over-characterize Biden, like be like, oh, he's a man of such great character.
He's just
That's
better
great.
than the other one.
He is just better than the other one, but honestly, he is a decent person. Yeah. Like, if you really learn about him, he is a good person. But does that make him a good president?
No.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yes or no, but to your point, like this election is more about a return to just a normal human being.
Right.
It's not even about like
that's where
progressing,
we've gone. Exactly.
Right? It's just like
that's where we've gone.
How do we get back to like some sense of normalcy,
exactly.
right? Like
how do we regain our integrity and
it was a bad run of beef at the factory, and it was getting everybody sick. So how do we
right. Well, and because there are certain things that Trump says that I can be like, yeah, I get it. Right? Like his views on the economy. Yeah. There's certain things where I'm like, do we need better immigration laws? Yes.
Yeah.
The
intellectual property thing with China, I actually agree with him on that.
Yeah.
We shouldn't have people stealing ideas and yeah.
Yeah,
fair.
I agree.
Yeah.
How and I keep saying, like, I would be more supportive, and I used to say this when he ran 4 years ago. He should not be the president. However, have him be an advisor. Have him what do you know about all of these things that you're so quote unquote successful or whatnot? Like whether you've succeeded, hopefully have learned and you've gotten a lot of experience. You don't have to be, you can fail and still learn, right? That's the whole part of the process. But I always used to say he shouldn't be the president, but have him as an advisor. Listen to what he's saying, because sometimes people who have that big picture view can say things, they just don't know how to execute them, right? Yeah. So you give that, hey, this is a problem, right? I don't know how to solve it, but you guys need to figure that out, right? That would have been so much more valuable, where it's like, hey, the Iran nuclear deal, right? It wasn't great. It wasn't perfect. And Iranians are really, they don't like it. because they feel like it validates the current regime. However, the reality is that regime is there. So there had to be some sort of dialogue. And that was just the first step. Let's get into an agreement so that we're at the table having a conversation. We both had to negotiate a lot. We won and lost. It wasn't perfect for either side. But the people were starting to thrive, right? The people were starting to do better. And then what happens? A couple years later, we come back and say, hey, let's renegotiate this deal. The deal is expiring. We need to renegotiate. So then we talk there. And then because the people are thriving, there's more opportunity to change things. There's more opportunities to get involved and engage. And then you can grow from there. It's not going to be an overnight change. But we just live in this society where we want a result right now, and we don't want to put the work and effort into it. Words mean more than actions.
Correct.
Right? So he can blurt out these things that people can agree with, but even though there's no action or strategy or plan on how to implement that, it doesn't matter. It's good enough, right? Like it's good enough. Well, and so it's really a dangerous space that we're in.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you on that one. But to go back, because I want to make sure we answer this question before the episode is over. Basically, the moral of the story is this: if I pay taxes and I choose not to vote because I pay taxes at the local level, both in state taxes and federal, I should be allowed to complain no matter what. I should be able to complain about potholes. I should be able to complain about poor education, even though I'm not on the board.
Okay.
I should be able to complain about the presidency because my money goes there. The same way my money goes to local police as well. So I should be able to complain. Now, I'm not saying right or wrong, but the person asked me that question. And I was kind of just like, I understand where the thing is like, well, I didn't vote for the president, therefore I can't complain about it because I didn't actively participate in the process. But then I also know the frustration of like, how much of a difference do I think it makes? Like we talked about being in California, right? Like, you know which way the state is going, how much difference does it make? And honestly, I don't know. I'm not sure how I feel about it. I don't know that I would necessarily shoot somebody down.
I think everyone has the right to say whatever they want and have whatever opinion they want. I just don't want to hear it. Like, to me, I'm an action-oriented person. I'm a problem solver.
If you didn't vote, don't complain. Sort of thing,
yeah. To me, it's like I don't want to hear it. Like, go complain to someone else that's willing to like sit in a pity party with you. Like, for me, it's a waste of your energy. Like, if you're not going to do something about it and it bothers you, go transfer your energy into something else. Go have some fun. Go have a party. Go do whatever.
Go have a party.
Like, go take a nap. I don't care. Like, it's just a waste of energy for me. It's a waste of your mental space. Yeah. So for me, it's just, I don't want to hear it. Like, you're entitled to, absolutely.
Yeah, whatever.
But I'm also entitled to be like, get the F out of my face.
Yeah, that's true.
Take that somewhere else.
Well,
but I mean, at the end of the day, you don't have to do everything. You can't do everything. Yeah. It's just not possible.
Because I complain about the streets of Oakland, but I've yet to go to a city planner meeting. You know what I mean? Like, I complain about all the potholes, but like, you know what I mean? I haven't done that, but I do.
Like, I'm not going to call Caltrans or the city. Just be like, hey, where
start sending them emails.
Yeah, but you could, right?
Yeah, I could.
You could attend a meeting. You could attend a session.
You're right.
And you could even just take one action to help do that, or find out who's there and let them know you support them.
Yeah.
Just say, hey, I support what you're doing. Thank you for doing it, and divide and conquer.
Yeah,
we all
have
can't
to do a better
everything.
job. We have to do a better job at it. But I get it's hard, man. The days are long, or the days are short, depending on depending on your lens. Dealing with there's a lot of moving parts to everything.
There are,
and that's the purpose of elected officials. But it's also an easy way to hide the things that actually happening on, and to retain power through misinformation, miseducation. And those sorts of things, which, we got to have an episode about the purpose of media, right? So with that, I think the moral of the story of this episode is make sure that you're involved at every level that you possibly can be. And if you're not involved, Samira does not want to hear you complain.
That's absolutely 100% too. Do not email me. Do not tag me. Do not post anything on my wall. I don't want to see it, and I don't want to hear it. Come to me if you want your problem solved, and I will help you, and I will, do what I can to help you get there. But that's just my personality. I can't do it.
Thank you for listening to another episode of We're Not So Different podcast. Be sure to subscribe, share, and review on your favorite podcast platform.
You can also find us on social media by looking up the handle at wnsdifferent or We're Not So Different on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. You can also join us live on Instagram or check out our previous live episodes on IGTV by following us at wnsdifferent.
If you have comments, questions, or thoughts, feel free to email us at wnsdifferent@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.